Welcome to Season 2 of Skillcast, the podcast by the London Organisational Skills Development. My name is Nurbanu, and I am your host. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey of growth and discovery. Each episode, we're sitting down with incredible guests, think experts, pros, and inspiring go-getters who'll share the stories and skills that fuel this success. Whether you're here to sharpen your own skills, get inspired, or just enjoy some awesome conversations, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome! Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's up, everybody? My name's Leslie Lew, and I am the founder of a company called Reclaiming Your Courage. And I am a humanitarian, I'm a global speaker, and I'm a women's self-defense coach. And what I do is I teach women the art of fighting without aggression. So really helping you hone in on confidence in your voice and in your body. And so the origin of that is having a martial arts background for 20 years. I realized that we cannot just focus on physical attacks and physical strength, that no matter where you are in the world as a woman, you go through the microaggressions, the gender-based violence, right? Which is what I'm really, really passionate about. That's my mission, is to save women's lives. So whether that's a physical attack on the streets or an attack on your profession, that there has to be a means of really protecting your energy, really focusing on your value, that you're worth fighting for.
That's really unique and really niche the way that you put it across, because there's so many different coaches out there, and yours is very unique, it's different. And I love that the origins is through your personal experience with being a warrior, what I want to say, like self-defense, more like.
Yeah, you're like, where does that come from? What's the orange story? I mean, look, I'm a typical Asian American, like really respectful for my mom, got bullied as a kid, highly overweight. My mom puts me in Taekwondo camp, right? Like I was in martial arts. I've had all that training, right? But it's a predominantly male field, right? And so after 20 years of expertise, I was like, these women really need someone to hold a safe space for them, to start asking questions of like, what's holding you back right now? Right? Like, what are you really fearing? Rather than just doing all the fancy stuff. And so I developed a methodology, what I call a warrior mindset, which is what I'm going to talk about at Skills Live. And to me, that's the framework in which I help my clients find their inner strength.
So what's the first key in the framework? What's the first thing you do?
Self-awareness, understanding your feelings and your emotions and what drives you. And the second being self-compassion, right? To really kind of dim the inner critic, to stop beating yourself up, to being so hard, right? Some of us have that overachieving mode. I'm not good enough. I don't have value. I can't charge my worth. And then lastly is courage. And courage means leading with love and speaking even when your voice trembles. That's key, is like, I'm scared, but leading with love is putting yourself in such a vulnerable circumstance where you're just leading with your heart.
Wow. So how do you lead with your heart? Because I'm one of those people, I always lead from my mind. How do you bring that energy back to a bit lower where you are going from your heart? What's the skill there?
I think there's a lot of skills. I think in movement, it's Qigong. I believe in stretching. I believe in meditation, spiritual practice for people. But I think that there's basic functional physical movement that we have to take ourselves through. I think getting in touch with our breath. I think it's really putting a pause, right? To, instead of just grinding and kind of going for things and trying to get your way by force and by pushing, is you actually have to slow down. And you have to actually look inward, right? So much of us attach our value to doing things for other people. I really wanted to make my mom proud. I wanted to do everything, right? But it's not until I started listening to myself and really putting the same love I was nurturing into other people onto myself. So that's where self-compassion comes into the place, right? Like, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? And how can I be kinder to myself so that I can lead people in such a pure way?
Is there like a short meditation or some sort of breath work that you could share with us today? Or you can share it with me because I'd love to know.
Well, for me, it really is the words that you use, right? So even if I'm traveling, even if I'm somewhere, I don't negotiate my affirmations. Very, very powerful visualizations, like where do I want to be, right? What does standing in my power look like, right? So 3 affirmations that I say to myself is I'm rooted in love and courage. I am a warrior. I am a cycle breaker. Because that's me. Those are the words I'm using to myself. And so when my energy exudes into the world, that confidence shines through because I believe in myself, that I'm worth fighting for. And I think that it's taken 40 years to even say that. Right. And so that's what I teach my clients is really like, how do you take that and go inward, and has nothing to do with physical kung fu stuff and all the fancy stuff. It's really like, well, how do you set a boundary that doesn't push someone away? That maybe that you creating that boundary is the very thing that's going to draw you closer to someone you love.
Oh, wow. So do you do this every day, these affirmations?
Absolutely. Every day.
How many times?
It's part of my spiritual hour. So every day I say it at least 3 times to myself. Mm-hmm. I record myself saying it and I listen to myself saying it. We have to hear our voice. Mm-hmm. And then I do animal flow and I do qigong. Qigong is an Eastern practice of tapping on the body.
Okay.
You experienced some of that in Toronto, which is what I was doing. Because if I don't like the energy that I'm exuding, mm-hmm. if I don't like the energy in the room, I can change my energy. But that requires my mind and my body and my voice to be in sync. And the only way for my mind and my body and my voice to be in sync is if I create space for myself. So the biggest thing I help my clients with is you cannot hold space for anyone else until you find it within yourself. And so I tell you all the time, like, have that time for yourself. That's non-negotiable every day. It's not a luxury. It really is every day. Even though I'm a mom with 2 kids and a wife, like, nope, this is non-negotiable. Every day, this is my time.
So how do you block that time out when you've got children all over the place, your husband's calling and saying, "Is dinner ready, love?" Like, well, how do you make that time?
Boundaries. I schedule it. I
Okay.
schedule it. Yeah, absolutely. A visual person. It has to be in my calendar. So that's not the hard part. Mm-hmm. It's really not allowing that time to be hijacked. Right? Well, can't you just move it, or can't you do the no? Right? Like, what do you need before I go? But this is what I'm doing. The answer is always boundaries, because you're protecting yourself energetically, right? And so people respect. They may not understand your boundaries, but they will respect it, right? So I think being able to realize that boundaries is not about aggression. It's about being assertive, and being assertive is not rude. That's what a woman warrior is. That's what fighting for yourself is.
Do you sometimes have to break your boundaries depending on the situation, or is it like you're very firm in the way that you do things and you have a structure? And if that structure is broken, does that irritate you, or how do you cope in that situation?
I mean, it's a great question. I think now the same framework I use for myself is the framework that I take my clients through. And to be honest, like, my boundaries, they're not meant to explain to someone, right? And so I think your question is like, do I compromise those boundaries?
Yes, that's my question.
No, I don't. In all areas of my life, in my business, at home, in my friendships, and my personal life. And I think that that is the very thing that has made me honor myself and has made me a better leader, has made me a better present mom, makes me a better wife. And it's not until I started doing that till people started really listening to the heart of what I had to say. So people usually have fear in exerting the boundary. I'm like, no, like, the boundary is, you have no control of whether or not someone respects your boundary. They'll make the choice for themselves. You don't have to make the choice.
Wow. That's really powerful, the way that you've put it across. So with these boundaries, how did you, I think the question I'm trying to get across is, have you always been this way, or was there a point in your life where you like, no, you put your kind of foot down. Because when you talk about boundaries and the fact that you don't like to compromise those boundaries, it may come across to, not to myself, but maybe to a loved one, that isn't she a little selfish? Like, what's going on there? How can you find the right balance of having the boundary but then not being selfish?
Well, I think that there's a couple of aspects of that question. Is like, culturally, I was told a lot that that's very selfish. And so I had to break that pattern, right? I had to live my own life. I had to forge my own path, and I had to be unapologetic about it. So the turning point for me was professionally, in my family life, I did everything for everybody, right? Like, straight A student, went to university, did all the things, right? And it just was never enough. And I think I got tired of being a punching bag, right? And it actually made me physically sick. Panic attacks. I can't sleep. I have to rely on anti-anxiety medication. And it's not until I became a mom that I really had to decide that I really want my children to live in peace. And the way to peace is for me to create healthy boundaries with people in my life.
I love that. I love the confidence. Honestly, like, you make me feel like I want to work with you and get that. Because whenever I think about boundaries, I always think, how can I be so selfish? Like, how can I put myself first? I want to put myself first. I want to take time out for myself. But there's so much to give to other people. And it's a journey. And I think everybody needs to go to that journey and kind of realize that sometimes being a little selfish is actually being kind to yourself. And it's self-love and self-compassion, like you initially started off with the framework. And I think are amazing ways for people to get started, for sure. In terms of self-love and self-compassion, what are the first ways that they can do it if they're not able to even realize what it is that they love about themselves and what they're compassionate for? How can they get started other than using the I know you mentioned the affirmation. Is there anything else that a person can do?
Well, it's taking inventory of, like, understanding, well, what are my drivers? What are my emotions? What are my thoughts? Every time this circumstance in which I feel like I can't get out of, right? So it could be physical technique. Like, how do I escape from someone who's overpowering me? That same principle applies to non-physical attacks. So I want you to think about, okay, well, if I'm feeling attacked or I'm feeling criticized, like, whose voice am I hearing right now? Or, like, how much of that is what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling? Or is that what is someone else projecting onto me? What's the first piece of empowerment is, like, what do I feel? What do I want? What do I envision for myself? And that's a question I didn't ask, because everything was about everybody else. Like, I put my life on hold and I didn't get to, like, live the life of my dreams because I felt selfish. I felt guilty. I felt like I was dishonoring my mother, right? But instead of constantly looking for approval, I turned it inward. And so part of those practices is writing down, what are my thoughts? What are my motivations? What are my desires? What's my true voice? I have to know what my true voice is.
So when would be the best time to sit down with yourself? Would you suggest in the morning or the afternoon, the evening? Is there a framework in that process?
I think it's a great question. I think it's really a matter of it's not when, it's the consistency and the discipline in doing it. Right? It's not an occasional thing. It's like, to me, you're the non-negotiable in any situation. So I prioritize that time. Right? Like, it's part of my routine. It has to be daily. Movement is part of my routine. Martial arts practice is every day. Energy work is every day.
Oh, so you do energy work and martial arts, and then you mentioned Qigong as well. Is that part of it, or are these, like, separate entities now?
All three, all in the same hour.
Oh wow! So you actually dedicate an hour where you're doing, like, what, 15 minutes, or is it longer? How do you balance the time?
I just set an hour for myself and I blend all of it. I do my affirmations, I do my visualizations, I do my breathing. Mm-hmm. I do qigong to wake up my body, and then I move, right? Like, to me, it's like dancing. It's very pure. It makes me feel it's a visceral ancestral response.
So qigong, is that like when you, like, tap yourself and kind of wake up parts of your body? Is that
yeah, it's based on Eastern practice and qi, so that there's certain it's the same thing with tapping sequences and EFT. It's just there's different points of your body to create energy, right? So when I show up at a speaking engagement or whatnot, like I always tap my body in sequence. There are sequences.
Do you want to share a sequence with us today?
I don't necessarily know if we have time for that, but like I'm happy, even if it's a simple cupping and you're tapping areas up and down your body, right? Mm-hmm. And I did this kind of at the conference we were at, and I'll do some at Skills Live. Nice. It really only takes 2 minutes.
And what does that do to you?
It makes me have clarity. It makes me feel energized. You know that feeling of like if you can't get your second win and you're so tired, right? Like, I don't know if I have it in me. That's the very thing that helps get me to the finish line.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And that was a great way to finish this podcast. So if people want to reach out to you and connect with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, reclaimingyourcourage.com. That's the way that people can really kind of get introduced to the work and to connect with me. And yeah, I'm just, you can find me on Instagram at Reclaiming Your Courage, one word. Amazing. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here.